Good evening, and I will some minutes to use CFLD Capital, and also one of the sponsors of this event. So, this building is an incubator, and it needs CFLD Capital. CFLD is a Chinese company founded in 1998 in China. And last year, we have more than $8 billion US, and we have more than 4,000 employees. Our company is the vision is a world leader of investment operation of new industrial cities. So, from 2002, we came into the fields, construct and operated new industrial city. Until now, we have more than 20 new industrial cities in China, most of around Beijing, more than 80, and some around Shanghai, and one in Shenyang City, Liaoning province, even North China. So in each new industrial city, more than 50% of the area is for industries such as biotech, robots, aerospace, new energy, new material, sensor, and e-commerce. And from that year, we came into the fields, construction and operating new industrial city. More than 6,000 companies have invited to our industrial cities. And also, we have about 1 million square meter industrial plants specified for different industries, like biotech and robots. This company very famous, maybe RCB, little size. The screen in our smartphone, and this is our industrial plants, and this is the incubator, biotech incubator in Guan, our first new industrial city. Also, for the first incubator in Wuhan in 2012 years, we are building a worldwide incubating network. In this year, in this quarter, in the second quarter this year, we will have more than 5,000 square meters space in Beijing and Shanghai. Also in the central district in Beijing, we are in Zhongguancun, and in Shanghai, we are in Zhangjiang. In this year, also we have several incubators all over the world. USA, Silicon Valley is already set up in 2014. And Germany, Israel, and North Korea this year will build 3 new incubators. CFLD is founded in the early last year, opening ceremony, and began to operate in September last year. Nowadays, we have about 16 startups in this building, most of them in the first floor. So, CFLD Capital, this is 6 fields we are interested in, based on different levels of sources in China. We want to bring high-tech companies from here back to China. So we have the connections, not only between US and China, but also the worldwide. Also, except In this building, we also have a seat from the VC and the PEs in America and also in China. So if everybody, if you have opportunity, if you have the desire to expand your market in China or have your own business in China, please contact me and we'll really do something for you. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Will give a second introduction on the innovation chain.
So first of all, you can scan this WeChat ID. So this is basically for today's event. I think can you hear me in the back? So what we like to do is for raising questions, you can use this, and you can discuss anything in the WeChat. First, I'd like to apologize for not delivering the pizza on time. That's what happens when you have a last minute meeting with the chief privacy officer. I work for PayPal, so I really apologize for that. We are China American Innovation Network. We are a nonprofit organization having about 8,000 members in the U.S. and also all over the world. There are about 1,000 in China as well. We basically organize different events to promote innovation and entrepreneurship, to bridge the gap between China and the U.S., to share knowledge, resources, and basically bridge the needs from both sides. So this is a picture showing that all the events that we have organized. Some events like this, just seminars. Sometimes we have teaching events for entrepreneurs, and also we have other boot camp events for startups or for people who are interested in starting a company. And every year we have a annual event. In the last 2 years, they were all held in Beijing. The topics were, the first year was gaming, and the second and third year were big data. This year we'll have a different topic, which is smart city, smart life in Hangzhou, June this year. So I would like, right now it's June 28th. It's Friday. It's one day event. So I'd like to thank our sponsors, PwC and FEMIC, and also like to thank CFLG for providing this wonderful facility. So what I'd like to do is to give you a story to kick off the event. I have a 7-year-old son, first grade, and just a couple of weeks ago he asked me a question. Dad, can I have a watch? Of course I need to ask to know why. And then he said, because one of his classmates has one. I was puzzled, why is that? Of course, we have a lot of discussions later on. And recently, just a few days ago, he told me another girl actually got a watch in his class. So it makes me think, this is what he ended up getting. But I did promise him that I'll give him a watch for Chinese New Year. But the point of the story is, if you look at the kind of the adoption life cycle, see this guy is innovator, and my son is probably early adopter. So today's topic basically covers how to acquire the early adopters, the innovators and early adopters, and then pass the Chasm going into the mainstream. So we have a wonderful speakers lined up. Unfortunately, actually, Larry Lee has a conflict; he could not make it. So we have the first one today. The flow of today's event is every speaker will give about 10 minutes of talk, and then we'll have 5 minutes Q&A. You can use the WeChat to raise your questions, or you can raise your hand to raise your questions as well. With that, I'll invite Jay to come here to first.
can go home before 9.
Well, Jill is my classmate from Legend Star boot camp. So I didn't anticipate you put me on the spotlight, though. I thought Larry was going to talk first. So I guess I'm the first person to talk. So my talk is actually, we're at the very beginning of that crossing the chasm. The very early stage in how you do, I'll say, adopter user acquisition. This is more of a experiment, lessons learned based on what we have done. There's nothing like I saw one of the guests who has 100 million users. So if you guys are looking for 100 million users, you should really talk to him. And I can share something about acquire the first 1,000 users. Okay, so this is a very hands-on experiences. Again, this is for a product that we've been working on since last year. This is focused on a consumer digital health product. So if you're working on enterprise product, this may not apply to you. So oftentimes, we live in the valley. In the startup ecosystem, we heard about this buzzword growth, or hyper growth, and there are even discussions about how to engineering growth. So one of the things we learned very early on was that we should really focus on product market fit. Focus on product market fit before we focus on hyper growth, and we do that for a reason. Right? So one of the things we have learned when we've been having this discussion with our venture friends is that if you cannot really find a product that your organic users like, acquiring them, you can use all the techniques, all the tricks for spending money buying traffic, but you end up having users who may not be liking your product, and they come to your site, they come to your properties, and they leave, right? You end up spending a lot of money wasted. So this is why we decided to focus on product market fit before focus on growth. I didn't prepare this diagram. I just borrowed from Google image, but it tells you a very basic idea. Oftentimes we have a lot of people talking about, hey, generating traffic. You can talk about generating tens of thousands of traffic, whether you're going to a search engine or you're going to social channels. But more importantly for us is really kind of acquire a small set of users that we think fit into our target audience, target persona, and at the same time really spend a lot more time focused on the engagement element. Because we felt that if our early adopters do not spend quality time on the site engaging with us, that means we're not doing a good job. Right? So our goal is to having them not only they come to our properties, they actually talk about it, they actually spend time to talk about it. And there are some conversations, for example, there are some rule of thumb you can think about when you talk about, hey, what is the quality of engagement? There are some analytical data you can look at from the Google Analytics perspective, and how much time you're spending on a site, right? Average session time versus how many pages you're spending on the site. Or the other way of looking into that is, hey, what if you're asking your return user, what if we stop the service today? Will you be upset? Right? Or will you be, how likely are you to refer our product to your friends? Right? So we can use those more of qualitative data to kind of measuring, hey, are you building something that people really want to use? My experience is really about this engagement level. This is one thing that's very interestingly, I recently decided to hire a more dedicated product manager who has been doing product management for a larger company. And one of the things he showed to me when he came to our office was focus on this too. This is probably a very popular diagram a lot of people probably have seen elsewhere, especially if you go to business school or come to entrepreneurial schools. The two areas that we've talked about is revenue generation and value proposition, right? So I think oftentimes, even for ourselves, we started building a product without thinking too much about how the revenue is come from. Right? Oftentimes we think we have users, and there's going to be all this business model we can apply. But how about if you're working at that model reverse, in a reverse approach, right? So think about this is the business model. Why are people coming to your site? Why are you doing something different than the existing solutions? For example, when we were building our site, we thought, hey, there's no existing player. Well, the existing player is really outdated. One of our competitors is babysitter.com. This is one of the properties, very popular for parents. They're one of the Johnson companies. We thought babysitter.com was built with the last century or the last decade technology approach. We thought our approach is very, very different. Then we had this conversation to talk about, hey, what is our unique value proposition? And actually, this is a conversation just happened in our office a week ago. So actually, I'm using this as an example to kind of revisit our own thinking about, hey, are we really offering a unique value proposition that our users actually like to see come to our site on a regular basis versus the come. Another example in how we kind of revamp our process is that we had the fortune to have a very interesting designer came to our office. She actually helped us to kind of refine our user target audience. Originally, we work on a site focused on first-time parents. Right? So instead of just have this general idea of what is a first-time parents, we spent actually a week session to talk about what is our ideal persona, what is our ideal customers, who do they look like, why are they coming to the site? This is actually a wall still. This is my living room at home. How we designed the first persona mind map. And in the process, it's very interesting. We actually made some very, very important business decisions in this process. We actually abandoned 50% of our business at that particular point. And for us, it's actually a lesson well learned, make us much more focused on what we try to deliver and what we want to do. So in this particular exercise, I want to share with you. So we, at the very early days, we were trying to focus on baby sector as well as the senior sector. Because in healthcare, we thought these are the two particular vertical that has a strong demand into healthcare. So in this particular persona exercise, we actually decided, let's focus on baby. It's much more pleasant to focus on baby than working on senior. So we will come back to senior once we take off. Again, based on that conversation, a few months later, we actually launched our prototype. And within that prototype, we had a first-time father. He's also a designer. Right? He came to my home this time. We still didn't have an office at the time. And we further worked on this user persona. We need to apply on what are those parents, first-time parents are thinking about? What are the top 3 or 4 things in their mind during pregnancy or after birth? What are the things they need to do? They need to do now. They're willing to spend money on, right? That's how you kind of experimenting with all these different hypotheses to identify your target users. I want to give one example. So I heard this word was at another product design conference, and there was someone talking about, hey, make sure you fish at where the fish swims. Right? So, for example, I've been thinking about, hey, why is Julie invite me to this talk? And are this the target audience I need to talk about? Then I realized that maybe there's some other angles I can talk about our product or sharing our journey. But it's very important that you spend time with your users, find out where they are. Right? So in our examples, right? So we're in healthcare, we're in baby. We want to go to where, for example, public library or children's library. You see a lot of parents who are expecting parents. Right? If you go to daycare centers, you can actually hang out with this mom, dad, be ready. They're just waiting. They're doing nothing but waiting for the child to come out. Right? So those are the areas you can think about identifying your target audience and fishing. So this is a very interesting photo that was shared with one of the users we interviewed, and I spent $50 on this. And I'll tell you what. So because our team was very interested in this shared economy model, So I actually opened up one of the rooms in my house, and I decided to open that up on Airbnb. Because I want to see how exactly this Airbnb model, not only from a user perspective, I've been using Airbnb as when I travel, use Airbnb, right? But actually opening up one of my rooms, allowing myself as a host to do that, I have a different perspective on what kind of users come to my room. And from a business perspective, give me a much deeper sense of why this model will attract so much user. So it happened to be this couple was the very first couple we hosted, and they happened to have a baby. When they actually booked to our room, I had no idea they had a baby, and this baby was 2 months old. They were traveling from Chicago, came to Berkeley, and went into my place. I actually didn't tell them anything about our project. They actually saw the diagram on my living room the day before the leave. Right? So they talked to me, hey Jay, we thought this is something that you guys are doing is really interesting. So let's talk about this when we're having dinner. So over the dinner time, I thought about maybe this is a target audience that I can acquire them, right? So I offered them, what about, hey, I know you guys are very busy for a wedding. What about if I offer you guys a free night of stay for tomorrow? You can hang out in the city and just for 2 more hours with me so I can do a user interview. And they gracefully agreed. And interestingly, after this user interview, the mother actually sent me a set of photos they took for the father having this kind of intimate relationship with the little baby. So I found this is a very interesting kind of user acquisition. We learned, unexpectedly, but I think this has been very helpful for us to really having this kind of very, very close engagement with our user. Some of the other other lessons we learned, always have a goal with your team. We actually did not have measurement conversion goal with our team early on. We actually just started adding those in the past couple of months. We started using those conversion numbers to kind of helping our team to have our goals aligned with those. Right? So I don't know what kind of site are you guys running. For example, Facebook, they will use monthly average user or daily average user. Airbnb folks, they will be probably using the number of days booked. WhatsApp, they use number of messages. E-commerce oftentimes is the transactions you're making. How many transactions are you making? So what is your metrics? Right? Are you measuring by the number of fans or your website traffic, or are you using emails? And those are common metrics you can use, but make sure you have a goal when you set that up front. Some additional photos, we kind of decided, reaching out to our user a little bit more. We actually started just this year, at the beginning of this year, participated in some of the public appearances. So this is actually one of the products we actually feature on our site. This is a fertility monitoring device, and we thought it's very, very interesting, especially for the more of a, there's a population who are delaying their pregnancy, right? Population in their 40s, for example, they're having difficulty getting pregnant, and we actually decided to focus on and to feature this particular product. And that's our team member. We actually did another kind of user acquisition event at an event hosted at IBM Innovation Center. Again, using those numbers we measured, we found this event was much more targeted, with a lot of females, a lot of women around there. And this event, although we had more team members participating, we actually acquired a lot less users. So it was not very successful. So very last, I will just do a shameless plug of what we do. So HealthyBee is a social marketplace helping first-time parents discover baby tech and mommy tech products. We're looking for talent, so if anyone is interested, especially we're looking for female talents. One thing that I realized, having a baby site, we have more female representatives. So if anyone want to talk to us, I'm very, very happy to talk to you offline. I think that's all I have.
Open for questions.
Oh, sure. Female first.
Thanks so much for your talk. It's very informative. This is actually my first time learning about what your offerings are. strategy to target and acquire future users? Have you tried social media or any other potential marketing strategy you have tried?
Sure. First of all, I want to emphasize we are actually deciding not to focus a lot on digital marketing on user acquisition. We actually wanted intentionally to keep our users at around 1,000. By the way, we just reached the 1,000 users in the past 2 days. So 40% of our users are actually coming from Facebook. We decided to use Facebook as the exclusive social channel based on our own market research. So it's very important to be very focused on the channels you use, right? So it depends on what product, the target audience are you working on. In our particular research, we found the first-time parents, they are heavily influenced by engagement on Facebook over, for example, Pinterest or Twitter. So that's why we decided on using Facebook exclusively as our social engagement. Another very interesting number I can share on Facebook is actually 30% of traffic are actually male. So we found that there's a very interesting man or father adoption kind of interest in the baby side. Any question?
Yeah, thanks for the talk. Two questions. So based on your experience, what's the most effective channel acquiring new users? Because you talk about you mostly focus on the offline channels, right? And the second question is, most of the venture capitalists are looking for traction. So I guess for you, you're looking at user engagement instead of the number of users are using your product. Have you received any funding? Have you been questioned about whether keeping that number so small is the wise thing?
So again, I think every company has their own situation. In our case, we're actually not, especially at the current stage, it's not our focus to focus on the number of users we have. It's more of focus on the engagement quality we have with the users. We actually tried some experiment with the Google AdWords, with the Facebook advertising. And the key for that is actually not acquire users. The key for us is really understand where are some of the models actually work with our target users. And if we were to acquire them, what is the cost of that? Okay, so for us, it's really testing our models. Again, yes, especially for late stage VC, there have been a lot of questions about what's your traction. That's why we're not using funds from VCs now. Our funding we're looking from right now are actually from seed investors, angels who are actually asking us particularly this number, what's your engagement number?
How about the offline channel? What's the most?
We found offline channel for us has not. I would say so. Offline channel is not super scalable. You have to realize that, right? Unless you have the ability to really market yourself in a very kind of focused way. So, for example, go to a mom's conference, you are able to acquire some very influential users, for example. So in our case, we have not been invited to a mommy's conference, so we have not been able to acquire users in such way. But we found that the offline activities help us to open up how our delivering our message. So with the offline conversation, we were able to get real-time feedback, right? So we can come back and revise our messages, so we can make that a lot more attractive to our users online.
Yeah, actually, I'm kind of, forgive me if I do not understand correct. So what exactly the product you, or what kind of service you provided to help this model get that first few criteria?
So our platform.
Repeat the question so the audience can.
So his question was, what exactly is our product and how do we help the first-time parents?
Correct. Yes.
So our product is help new parents or first-time parents discover baby technology, mommy technology products. Right? So for us, it's kind of offering that unique navigation, product recommendation approach. That's our unique offering. Yes.
Sorry for the multiple questions. I do understand that you are saying that you tried hard on the offline marketing side to acquire more engaged users. For example, my understanding is that I was a young mom, my first-time mom 2 years ago, and I was involved in a number of different mom after a while, the room might be silent. And I had a talk with one of the most influential users in the group that we feel the most easy way to keep the whole WeChat group active is if you host a offline activity or event, such as like a seminar, educational consultant is giving a talk on how to prepare the kids for higher education activities. So my question is, how did you define who are the most influential users in your 1,000 subscribed users?
That's a very hard question. We're still looking for answers. But I think there are actually tools on the web. I forgot the name of the tool, but you can search. There's something called social score. Right? You can actually check on this person's background to understand what this person's social influence on the web. Basically, it measures how many people follow this person actively and how often this person actually are being active on the social network, whether it's Twitter, Pinterest, or Facebook, right? What have you. So actually, there are things you can reach out. Another area for us is actually reaching out to some of the well-known popular bloggers, because we know they're very active, very influential on the web. So instead of just fishing them, we're just reaching out to them directly. Hopefully they will bite our baits.
I kind of feel that you're trying to more promote your product via an offline channel, but then you're still measuring the activeness or the influential index by the online activity. So I kind of feel that online and offline activity are kind of bounded. You cannot really separate them clearly. And even when we are doing a marketing, because I'm actually a marketer, I do a lot of digital marketing stuff like marketing, PPCs, email links, or even like online advertising like banners or real-time meetings. So I kind of feel nowadays it's kind of like a very effective way compared to those online.
I agree. We actually have a few offline events kind of lining up. For example, we have one of the public library agreed to hosting us for an offline event. I'll give you one quick example that we're learning right now. So there's a company called Product.com, right? So they're very well known for hosting parties in the city. They recently hosted a 50s event where we're hang out in the city. I think there were like 3,000 or 4,000 people sign up. So I didn't go. I signed up originally, but I thought about anything with the 3,000-4,000 is going to be a huge line. So, and then I checked out with my friends later on. They were saying the line was like 2 or 3 hours long for people to get in. So maybe that's a unique angle you can learn from combining the offline and online activities.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Hoffman. I'm called Captain Hoff by people who know me. I run Founder Space, and we're an accelerator in San Francisco, right downtown in the Soma area. And I want to talk today, about crossing the chasm in terms of, I look at lots of startups. So I've been an active angel investor in startups. I look at hundreds of startups every month to get into Founder Space and try to pick out which ones I think can actually cross the chasm and what qualities they have that enable them to do that. So I'm going to go over like the 5 big things. And usually I deal with early stage startups. So they don't have a lot of traction. Like if you have 100 million users, then you're out raising, $100 million. But before you have that type of traction, what do I look for, and what do investors look for in a startup that really defines them as the type that will go? Because we're all taking bets on them. So number one, and most investors will tell you this, and I'll tell you it too, I look for team. And this, specifically, team isn't enough, because anybody can say, oh, it's a great team. But what is a great team? So a lot of people will come to me, and they'll be a solo founder, they've been thinking of this idea for years, they have filed a patent and it's been granted, and I would almost never accept that. Because they've been thinking about it for years, first of all, but they haven't attracted anybody else to join their core team. They filed a patent, usually, without even going and testing the market. And so patents, you'll find patents are nice to have, but in most sectors, they don't matter at all. They're actually a waste of time and money. Very few sectors do patents really matter. Like if you're inventing a new chip or something like that, you've had a scientific breakthrough and you really need that defensibility, well then patents matter. But in especially in the consumer space, they almost never matter. Usually they come afterwards. So like Facebook just acquired a bunch of patents, right? You know, they had the money, they bought them, they didn't have them when they started, and it didn't matter, because once they make it, they can buy them. So a smart investor doesn't really worry about that for 98% of the startups. But they do look at the team very carefully. And when you see a solo founder, what does that tell you? It tells you, number one, a great founder out there, a founder that you really want to back, that they must have been able, you want to see and demonstrated in their team that they've been able to recruit people onto their core team to work without money, and that these people are the type of people who could go out there and get a six-figure job. So they're actually sacrificing 6 figures to come and work for free for this startup. You want to see a CEO who has that same potential. So they don't have to be from Harvard or MIT or Stanford. I mean, that's nice to have, because you know what that tells you in an investor is that, well, they definitely could have gone out there and got a 6-figure job. So that the fact that they're doing this startup means a lot, and that they're probably somewhat intelligent to get in those universities. But there are a lot of other factors in the team that matter. So number one is, what sort of qualifications do the founders have? So I personally like to see a well-rounded team. So if I see a team of 3 business people, but they don't have a single technical co-founder on the team, that's a big red flag. And why is it a red flag? Well, it's a red flag for a number of reasons. It means, well, how are they building this product? You know, who's actually going to execute on this vision? And if they're out there hiring contractors, which a lot of startup founders I know, very smart startup founders do, the problem with that is you can hire contractors, but they're never as committed as true founders will be. A contractor will come in, they'll do the job, and I'll tell you, most contractors are working on more than one thing at a time. They have to be, they're contractors, they never know when their contract's going to end. So they might be working on 3 or 4 things at the same time they're doing that, and that means their attention is diffused over all those different projects they're working on. And really, we all know that when you do a startup, your product or service has to be exponentially better than what's out there. If it's just incrementally better than what's on the market, you will never break out. Because people, you know, there's a certain amount of inertia people have to switch to a new product. So it has to be really breakthrough. But in order to have breakthrough design, breakthrough business model, all the different things you need a team that's so focused on analyzing the market and understanding it, that if you're hiring a contract engineer, they kind of get the bare thing done, and this is what happens. They kind of do the bare bones, they get it up, it seems like it works, but it doesn't scale. There's usually a lot of problems, and then that contractor, as soon as you run out of money, you know what they do? They're on to the other 3 projects they're working on. They're not thinking about this at all, and you're stuck there, and that's when you need the most, is when you don't have money. That's why having a dedicated team, I wanted to see a dedicated team, not part-time people with part-time, you know, they're working full-time and they're doing it on the side. I want to see them completely focused on that. I also want to see a team that can truly execute on this kind of crazy vision they have. So they have to really understand, you know, there has to be one person who really knows how to do business. There has to be another person who really understands the technology necessary. There has to be another person who understands design, you know, how to really do design. And it's nice if they have a marketing person too, but that isn't always necessary. Because a lot of times at the very early stages, the stage I would be looking at, they don't have a lot of money to market. So usually what they're doing is like what you were saying, they're doing a very small user group and they're trying to show engagement, right? They're trying to show, I don't care if they have 1 million users because I don't expect them, but I want them to have 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 users and see that those users totally get their product and are going crazy with it. They can show me that type of data, and then I know they can acquire the other customers if the market's big enough. So that's, when you look at a team, those are kind of the elements. And if any investor sees that one of those elements are missing and they're kind of knowledgeable, they'll shy away. That'll be like a knock against the company. And I'll tell you, when you're looking at hundreds of startups every month, which all of us do, it only takes one thing to make you move on to the next one. So, because there's so many you're looking at. So team is number 1. Number 2 thing I really look at is how well they know their customer. And Stephen and I were just talking about this, and he was saying, I want to do a verbal interview. I want to really talk to them. I want to really understand like how well the startup founder understands everything about their customer. I'm not just saying, like, a lot of startup founders I know, I'll say, who's your customer? They'll say, oh, ours is all about women. you know, and I'm saying, we're marketing to women, and that's not good enough, right? Like, you did an excellent job of like defining your customer very clearly. You're, you know, like, you did it down to like, you understood like, you want to know everything about that customer. You were saying it's moms, you know, they're between this age and this age. You want to know the type of neighborhood they live in. You want to know the type of car they drive. You want to know everything about that customer. And if the startup founder is able to communicate that to me, like that they really, really get their customer, they understand it, then I start to have faith that they're going to know how to sell to that. That they've actually, first of all, really talked to the customer, spent a lot of time thinking about the customer, and that they will have a chance of truly engaging that customer. So I want to also hear the feedback. Like, what did their customer tell you about the product? What are they thinking? Exactly why are they using your product and not any other product? What does this fill for, you know, all the needs that it fills? And the more specific and detailed they get, the more important. And that is so critical. Usually, like, I get there, and you'd be surprised, I talk to a lot of founders, some very experienced and others very novice. And even the very experienced ones a lot of times don't do this. They kind of get this great idea, they're in love with the technology or the idea, it's a new IoT thing and we're just gonna build it, give me the money, but they don't even know who's gonna use it, how they're gonna use it in their house, what they're gonna do with it, all the different things. So I really wanna see that, and it can come across in your, you know, in your investor deck and in an in-person interview, and I love videos. Like when you go on, you know, AngelList is being driven by videos now, and don't do these, I see these videos all the time, that don't answer the things I'm talking about now. What you want to go through is make sure all the things, the 5 things I'm telling you right now are in your video. You don't want to talk, like, I see these super slickly produced videos with great music, and they hired some professional photographer, and the product, you've seen them on AngelList, you know, looks really cool, but you have no idea about their company. You really know nothing. You know they can make a great video, you know. That's what you know. You really don't know any, so you really got to delve into these areas. And when I tell startup founders to go out there and talk to investors and really convince them when they don't have traction, I tell them, throw out the PowerPoint, throw out everything. I want you to have a dialogue with your investor. I want you to really go deep with your investor about your team, about your product, and about all the different elements of your business. I don't want you to be just talking at them. I want you to be talking with them. Like, it should be a conversation. If you do that, I'll tell you, it will up your chance of getting funded. If you stop giving PowerPoints, if you actually just talk to them. Let them ask you questions, learn about them. And if they ask you questions you can't answer, that's a great thing. Because that's telling you what you need to know for the next investor. You know, and you can get back to them on that. So a lot of people, like, whenever they can't answer it, they don't solve that problem, they just feel bad. Like, oh, I couldn't, you know. But you really have to think about what the investors will tell you exactly what they want to invest in. If you listen closely by their questions and encourage them to ask questions, they will actually start to tell you exactly what they want to invest in. I've done 3 venture-funded startups myself, got them all funded. Well, the first one took a long time because I didn't know any of this, so it was really, really hard. But every one after that got faster and faster, so I could get them funded in like 3 months. You know, literally by iterating by talking to investors, listening to them, iterating on my pitch. Not necessarily the pitch deck, but in my head, re-editing everything I would say, thinking very carefully about why they asked me those questions and what I should be thinking about. So let's go to number 3. So big market, right? You really must demonstrate that it's a big market. So, you know, all the investors in Silicon Valley, you talk to them, they have their business model. You can have a great business model that can make you millions of dollars, and maybe you should do it, but you shouldn't waste your time going out for investment money. If you're not going to be a multi-billion-dollar company, the guys on Sand Hill Road and all the angels who are backing companies to go to Sand Hill Road wouldn't be interested in you. So, because first of all, I mean, you have to understand how these portfolios work. Every portfolio, most of the portfolios in Silicon Valley are based on a hit-driven model where 1 or 2 of their startups becomes the next Twitter and Facebook and pays for everything else. They're called fund makers. They make the fund. But they can only sit on so many boards, so their time is very limited. So they can't sit on 100 boards of 100 startups. So since they can only sit on around a dozen boards and be effective for those startups, they're going to want every single board that they sit on, their time being, money being not the issue, their time, they want every single one of those to be a potential multi-billion-dollar exit. They know they all won't be, but the fact that they have to, if they're going to place 12 bets, they better be sure that every one of those bets is potentially a multi-billion-dollar one. Then they'll settle for less, depending on the company. But you have to prove that to them. So when you go in to sit with them and talk to them, You need to actually demonstrate that this is a multi-billion-dollar market, and don't do the top-down approach, where you say, this is like a $30 billion market, and if we capture 2% of this, we're going to be, huge, right? We're going to have billions and billions of dollars. That never works for smart investors. They want to see a bottom-up model, because top-down doesn't mean anything. Usually, you're addressing a huge market, but your actual segment of that market is usually much smaller. So you're the actual addressable market. So you could say, yeah, we're targeting all schools, and it's a $100 billion market, all these educational universities. But actually, what are you targeting that schools want, and what is their budget for that, right? So all schools may be your market, and they may spend hundreds of billions of dollars in the world for education, but what is their actual budget for for the problem you're solving for these schools? And how are they allocating now, and how are you going to take that away? And then you start to get more and more granular, and you go down to exactly what you're selling them, and you've talked to them, and you know what they're going to pay because you've sat with them, and you can build that model from bottom up. So we're going to acquire 10 schools. They are already spending this much for an inferior product. We're going to come to them with a product that's significantly better. We're going to charge half of what they're paying, and that's exactly this much, and over time it will ramp up as we go from 10 to 20 to thousands of schools. That's the bottom-up market. That's really important to sit down with investors and prove to them that that can be a billion-dollar market when you scale it out. So the other thing I like to spend time really looking at, and investors, as an investor, is when you look, I want to look at their product. And I want to look at their product for some things. So what I don't want to see is a product that is all things to all people, right? We all know these products that have all these amazing features, and they've spent a year or two working on it, and it's everything to everybody, but they don't even understand what their core value of that product is. They have to, so the best products I see out there, products and services, whether you're going enterprise or consumer, they solve one problem really well. Think of every app you download, right? You download it for one thing. If it's a game, it's for entertainment, right? If it's a utility app, which most apps, exciting games are, it's to solve one specific problem for you. How do I connect with, how do we chat? How do I chat with all my friends? And it usually starts off very narrow. And a lot of times, like Facebook, they'll expand, their scope over time, but they all start off, like YouTube. It was funny, there are all these video sites out there before YouTube, right? They now have 1 million features on YouTube. But originally, the one single feature that drove YouTube was not this huge network of people sharing videos and watching, becoming a TV station, right? An entertainment hub. They weren't pitching that. But the one thing that drove consumer adoption of YouTube was they made it simple to share videos. They solved a specific problem for users. They made it simple for me to upload a video and share it with my friends, people that I know. Then all my friends would come there, and of course, as more and more people started to do it, it would go viral, and then they would have an audience for what came next. YouTube 2.0 that we all know today is very different than what the original utility factor of what drove their viral growth. So you need to think of your company from day one. What is that utility factor that they need to get it done, whether it's a business customer or a consumer, that they actually aren't getting elsewhere. And it can be that simple, because there are many video sites before YouTube, just as an example, that put up really high quality video when trying to build this TV network online. They could never gain traction. They never did it. There was Dan, I don't know if you recall that, during the .com, they had $100 million, and they were producing all this high quality video, and they all died because they didn't solve that kind of utility factor for the user. And so I really, really think about that. What is my user going to get out of it right now while I'm small, while I don't have a lot of other users? And is it a value? Can they get it nowhere else? So that's another thing. And then the products I look at, I want very simple products that do one thing very well. I want to see that they can strip out all the other features that they don't need. Because honestly, when you're testing these products for a true product market fit, the less features you have, the easier it is to test. And also the easier, because you need to understand what exactly makes, what mechanics are actually hooking your customers. What is getting them to engage? You need to quantify that. And if you've added so when you're designing your product, don't add all these social network features like how do I share the product, how do I do this, thinking that, it's got to go viral from day one and all that. No, you want to just test that one case that you're providing them with real value. And just focus on that one core feature. And if that doesn't hook users enough to get them to keep coming back to your app repeatedly, then just start over. Honestly, I've seen so many startups go out there and they kind of fall in love with their idea. They keep pushing on this idea. And it's kind of gaining some traction. You know, they're getting, 10,000 users. Now they're up to 20,000. But people aren't crazy over it. But they just keep pushing, pushing, and pushing. They waste so much time. Honestly, when I write, explosive product market fit out there, that is what you want. Because if you're really pushing hard or you're paying a lot to acquire users, but they're not really totally engaging, then you are wasting your time. Honestly, it's never going to be. You're better off. You're often better off just wiping the slate clean, throwing out what you have, and starting over, experimenting again. Just start with a clean slate. It can be targeted at the same customer, but just rethink it. Because you know the best products out there are the ones that pull you. Like, if you need to push users into your product, if you're always pushing on it to get it to go, there's something wrong. Admit to yourself that it's not. I've been in many startups and worked with many startups, and I see the startups that take off. They can't keep up. They're like, they put it out there and users are just like, give me more. I want more. I really love this. And then they're telling their friends. And so you have to see that mechanics, even if it's with 1,000 users like you do. If you can see them inviting their friends, right? And engaging repeatedly with your product and giving you kind of really detailed feedback about what they love. It doesn't matter if you have 1,000 users, I'd be more likely to invest in that than one with 100,000 users and they're out there acquiring customers and really, but it's never really going, They can't really prove to me that these users are totally in love with what they have. And the basic rule is that it's better to have a small number of users, that are totally in love with your product, than a large number of users who sort of like it. Because we all know what happens to apps we sort of like on our phone. They sit there for a while and eventually get deleted. They're kind of good. We use them a little and then they get thrown out. The apps that people totally love, if that market is big enough potentially, then that's what's going to make it go off. And let me talk about number 5, the last thing that I really look for. You're going to have competition out there no matter what you do. So don't, so many startups ignore their competition. They have these startups, they like, oh, these guys don't get it. You all want to think you're the best. I always do, right? It's my mistake. We're the best. We're so much smarter. But you're really not smarter if you don't pay really close attention to your competition. So a couple things I want you to do. Number 1, when I talk to an entrepreneur, I want you to be able to articulate very clearly exactly what is the unique insight you have into your market that none of your competition understand. Because if you can't tell me exactly why you're different and why customers love you, because the switching cost is super high. So you have to know exactly why they're switching. You have to be able to articulate this and understand this. Number 1. Number 2 in the competition thing is spend time on your competitors' sites. They have made a lot of mistakes. If your competitors, I'll go and look at startups and I'll see, are their competitors on fire? Because if they're not going like crazy, and this product is very similar to that, and these guys don't have a totally different angle on what they're going for, then I know they're just going to meet the same end. They're not better just because they say they're better. So when you're out there, think about your competitors. They've already spent probably a lot of money on advertising, on Google AdWords and Facebook ads. Look at their ad copy. Look at if they keep repeating an ad, it means it's working and you should borrow it. Look at the copy on their website. They probably tested a lot of you're a startup with no money. I'm talking early stage. You want to disrupt them? Look at what they've spent a lot of money and time, maybe years, figuring out works. Take that, because that won't be your unique value, right? You'll have some different unique, you better have something different than they are that's really going to propel you. But spend a lot of time researching, analyzing your customers. Call them up, use their service. Be their customer, right? Find out what they do, how they engage, and everything that they do well, you better have in your portfolio, and then you better have that little extra I talked about on top of it. So that kind of gives you a quick overview. And if you have those elements, if you kind of master those elements at a very early stage, crossing the chasm tends not to be an issue, right? People fall down because they haven't done that, because they haven't found that real product market fit early enough. and really validated it, that's when the early adopters will try anything. We see all of these things on Kickstarter and Indiegogo that just go crazy and people adopt them, but most of them, 95% of the Kickstarter successes, do not turn into real businesses. They're cool to have, but they're not a huge scalable business. They're like this new light for the bike that does this or what, or this new hardware product. People are coming to me with these kind of cool ideas for new hardware products like wearables and stuff, but they're not a huge business. People are going to buy them once. There's nothing that engages the customer beyond that. So you really have to think deeply. And I should talk one more element. Sorry, going a little. So one more element that I really, really want to see is there's a lot of hardware companies. Steve and I were talking at dinner about this. A lot of hardware companies out there are putting out hardware, but they're not thinking beyond the hardware. I don't care if you sold $1 million worth on Kickstarter. That's great. Make $1 million if you can, or $5 million. Hardware doesn't really matter. In today's world, hardware is so easy to copy. Most of you are from China. You know how quickly it is somebody can spin it, right? Copy the hardware, and literally in a month they have exactly the same product as you, and they're putting it out there, and there's no difference. What's the difference between your advantage of coming up with new hardware is a Trojan horse for the software. It's a Trojan horse to engage the user in a way that there's a high switching cost, that they have invested a lot in your ecosystem. So if you look at Apple, why is Apple so valuable today? Is it their hardware? No, everybody has that hardware, right? There's a million other companies with phones out there that are even better than the iPhone, right? I think the iPhone's good. It's in the top, but it's not necessarily better than Samsung or Xiaomi or any of these. They're undercutting prices and everything else. Over Apple's expensive. Why do people stick with them? The software, the ecosystem. They've locked people into that ecosystem. People have invested in buying all those apps. They've invested their time and energy in learning how it works and it feels comfortable. They've bought into that ecosystem. When you do IoT hardware or wearables or any other type of hardware, you're not selling the hardware. You're selling how you lock them into your system, into your software, how you keep them as users for life, how they don't want to switch. If you don't have a product that does this, that adds enough value to do that, ultimately you're just going to plateau. It's going to be a really hard business. You're going to get a bunch of early adopters or people who like that, and then you're going to be undercut in price, and the market's going to move on. So that sort of wraps it up. Do you guys have any questions?
You have some slides you want to show?
No, I just did answer. I thought I just talked. What? Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I'm. Yeah, I know. I need to get. I was thinking that tonight when I saw all those WeChats. I'm so used to being in Silicon Valley that I need to hook into WeChat.
I'll show his slides anyways.
Yes.
You already talked to all the.
Yeah, but these weren't exactly what I talked about. See, I always like to pivot, and I pivoted right before. Yeah, go ahead.
Question for Steve. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot. It's
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah.
My question might be another talk, but
Yeah.
if you look at the other way around,
Yeah.
for entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
what are the things we should look at for choosing the investment? For choosing the investment.
Oh, for choosing the investment. Okay, that's a good one, right? Yes, okay, yeah. I took what you should look for getting investment. You should be picky because there's a lot of money out there now, and not all investors are equal. So, number one thing is ask the investors. Every investor you have, even though they don't want to admit it, has invested in startups that have failed. The smartest investors in the world, right? I was with one today, this very rich guy in this house in Atherton, and he was just going on and on about all the early stage startups he failed and how hard it is, right? And this is a smart guy who's built a multi-billion-dollar company, and he's investing in early stage. So if they tell you they haven't had any that fail, they're lying. You can walk out right then. They're not being honest with you. That's one of the qualities. So I always look for, what do you look for? I think having an investor or a co-founder is the same thing. It's kind of a marriage, right? Especially if you give that investor a board seat, because now they're a partner in your company. If you don't give them a board seat, you can pretty much ignore them if you really want to. Except for a shareholder lawsuit, but you're probably not going to get involved at that level. But if they're a board seat, you really have to deal with them. So think of them like you're dating them, right? And you're thinking, well, should I go steady or get married or whatever, get engaged. Really think carefully, what are the qualities you look for? I always look for people who are honest with me, who I really want, who we think, I want them to have a different experience than me, but I want us to be able to communicate. So we have to really understand each other, because if they're up in some other plane, then even though they're offering me the money, it's going to be really hard when we have to make board decisions together. Ask them also for the 3 companies that fail, not just to see if they're honest with you, but to actually so you can call them up. Because you know, everybody can be nice when a company's doing well, right? So the 3 companies that succeeded, they're best friends with those CEOs. The 3 companies that failed, all the investors' worst sides come out when a startup is failing and their personal money is in it, they can become real jerks. And no, I mean, honestly, they can make the company fail. So if you call up those founders and really listen, now the founders often will be afraid to, some will be totally honest with you, others will be afraid to be honest, but if you start probing why the company failed, you know, and start really asking them, it's the same thing you do when you hire an employee, right? You know, why didn't the job work out when you're talking to their first boss, or why did they really leave? And then if you see them hesitate, the founder, and not kind of like glowing review, like that investor came in there, they did everything they could, or they really backed me 100%. If they're like, well, it got kind of difficult and stuff, you know, that's what they'll probably say. That's a red flag for you, right? That they're telling you that got kind of difficult with this investor, that means they're probably hellish. You know, they were probably like in real pain. The investor was being a real jerk to them. So you really want to know that before you get in with investors. It's really nice to see how they handle it when the going gets rough. Number 3 is what connections do they have that they can bring to the table, and are they willing to do it? So some if you call up former startups that have worked with them, and you ask the question of like, who, what, and you can go on LinkedIn or in their portfolios and look at the companies, although a lot of times they don't list the ones that fail. It's always the ones that succeeded that are in their portfolio, right? Well, the ones that failed, they somehow disappeared. So really go deep with the startups that they've worked with, on what value they added besides the money that I work with. Well, they'll actually, you know, they'll call up the president of Coca-Cola and like get you a meeting, you know? They don't, and there are other investors that are so afraid. Like they have these connections, but or they don't have them, but some of them have them, and they're like, oh, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to risk my relationships. Well, if you're investing in a startup, you should be willing to, and you believe in that startup, you should be willing to do those things. So, and ask what they can do for you. Like when you're in the interview, and I could go on, sorry, for like 2 hours on this. But I could just keep talking, but then ask what they can do for you. Get those commitments up front, same with the board of advisors and stuff. Ask what they're going to actually do and have them kind of put it down, like, or write it down and like really commit to it. Those are really important because a lot of, you know, if people commit to it, then they feel obligated to deliver.
They are not going to offend it.
Yeah. They won't. They'll, if you do it in a nice way. You can't be like arrogant and stuff. But yeah, if you're a nice person and genuinely want to build a business together, they see you as a partner. So, sure. Yes.
One more question. We can do it more in the
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So thanks for the talk. My question is about a timing question. So when do we start to talk to the early stage investors? For example, I'm working, you know, on the
Great
project.
question.
So with my friends, and we talk to our friends to validate the idea, you know. But you know, when do we start to talk to investors to validate the idea?
Okay, so this is my advice to you, and I give it to a lot of startups, and you know, not all of them take it. That's fine. I almost think it's too easy to get money now. Honestly, it hurts startups. So a lot of them think that when they get investment, that the investor is super smart because they apparently have enough money to give, you know, write them a big check, and that that's validation of their company. And then they build whatever the investor invested in, which may or may not be what product that will even succeed. And it's so much harder when you go, like Naval of Angelis was saying this, and I totally agree with him. He was saying, like, if you go out there, you get a few $100,000, you build your business, and it fails, it's almost easier to start a new company than to try to pivot that business into something new. Because other investors are like, well, you spent all this money and it didn't work. You know, why should I invest in you? You know, and you're trying to like, and it's really hard to, pivoting is really hard. People like, pivoting is really hard, especially later on as you get a burn rate and you've hired people. So I say, don't take investment money until you've done at least the basic proof to yourself that there's a real business there. And by proof to yourself, it isn't you talking to friends and kind of validating on them, because they're your friends. They might give you some good insights, and it's good to talk to them. Don't like ignore them, but they're not enough. They're not unless your friends are all your customers, right? Which is never the case. They might be, some of them might be, but go for your friends too, so they're biased in your favor. Go out to your real customers. Get evidence from them, and this will make raising the money easier too, and you'll waste less time. But really get evidence from them that they're going to commit to the product in a real way. So if it's an enterprise or B2B product, very easy. And the test isn't you go into them, and you can simulate your whole business. I have a whole nother talk on this, on simulating your business. You can actually simulate most software can be simulated without any coding. I like get the programmers off the keyboard, have your engineers, that should be on your team, with you in this process. Because you don't want them building something before you know exactly what it is. Because you know what's going to happen, they're going to build it, you're going to come back the next few weeks and you're going to say change it, and then change it, and change it, and soon they're going to be sick of you. Because you had them change it. Instead, have them go out there with you to the customer and make your engineers, who are usually very smart people too, and maybe you're an engineer too, but you all go out as a team, every single person on your startup team, engage with the customers. Everybody at that point is in discovery mode. And don't trust it when a customer says, yeah, I like this, it's really great. Go out and build and come back and I'll try it out, I'll use it. If they tell you that, they're just being nice to you. What you want from them, especially in enterprise or B2B, is for them to make a solid commitment, for them to get approval up the chain. The best commitment is when they're writing you a check. Even if it's a small check, a down payment. Even if it's $100, they still have to get approval on that $100, which means they have to go through a process of, do I really want this, right? And it's better.
Fund. We are traditional VC, and I'm managing a fund called Asia Star across the Pacific Ocean. I like to use I guarantee I will finish my 2 topics in 10 minutes. And Ziyong think it's a good idea to have some fun, to give some crystal ball, on for this year. And I will spend 3 slides on that, and before we kick off the real so-called tonight panel discussion. With that, I think I want to quickly give you the types of VCs, the traditional VCs, the corporate ventures, as well as micro VCs, we call the seed stage VCs. Basically, the traditional VC is the so-called the so-called life cycle VCs. Basically, they invest from seed all the way to pre-IPO run for the startups. And the typical fund size is north of 200 million, and every investor partner typically is in charge of 40 to 50 millions investment. And for the micro VC, basically we're referring to the fund size is much smaller, and the typical investment partner handles about 25 million or small, sometimes even smaller than that. And we call it seed stage. Typically, the micro VCs are focusing on the early stage, but also they have the strategy to do follow-on investment. Angels, super angels, angel fund, and all part of the angel group. So I don't have to repeat that. You all know that. With that being said, I'm sure many of you have gone through the exercise of doing the pitching to get money. I think the gentleman asking when, how, and who, right? So with that being said, I think that there's a lot of questions on what, who, and why, and how will be asked in the question. So this only lists maybe less than 5% of the typical questions that VCs will ask startups, right? So, elevator pitch, can you really give me 1 sentence companion sentence to do that? With all being said, I think I would like to use in the following 3 slides to give you what really can make VC tick. I call Stevens 4M. Basically, there are 4 big M's. One is market, and the other is management. The third is model. The 4th one is money. All right. So as Steve pointed out earlier, each specific topic we can talk about just one little item here. We can talk about 1 hour at least. So I'm going to now to talk all of that. But the bottom line is that Steve started with the management team, right? We are looking for not sole practitioner, not sole founder. We're looking for a sort of comprehensive or complementary, team with the market, with the product and design, the technology, as well as the guy can run the ship. So the relevant domain experience, why the team uniquely capable to execute. That's the key we're looking for, management, the team. And secondly, I think Steve talked a lot about the market, right? It's not really talk about how to go to market strategy. And we really want to look at for the founders and the team, do you really understand the market? When we talk about addressable market, we always refer to addressable market It's based on your technology, your product, your services, right? How much market bottom up, as Steve pointed out earlier, bottom up. What makes we believe that you can really get a certain percentage of the market? When, how, why? So that's the kind of question you as a founding team, you have to really work together as a team to show us, all right? So all those how to arrive, what are competition, who are your competitors? Small, big, medium, right? So you gotta really know inside and out. I've been coaching a lot of, the company I invested. So it's a lot of, exercise you have to go through. So about, so then you follow with the customer acquisition, and that's an easy task to follow with that. And the model, the third one, the model by definition is very simple. Why and how can you start, and when can you start to make money? And can you sustain that model to make money, and how long can you continue to make money? That's what we're really looking for, all right? The last one is called money. Now, we are in the business of making money, right? So with that being said, you gotta have some, at least the basic knowledge, no matter which stage you are, the financial three tables, right? P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, right? So you gotta have some, understanding about among those three things. And then typically, around stage A, we're looking for the 3, sometimes to 5 years projections. Projections are projections, but we really want you to go through the exercise about what assumptions you have made based on your business model, based on your market competition, how much and when, how big can you gain the market shares, at what price. So that's the assumption we're talking about. And then followed by cap structure, right? Basically, especially for the follow-up runs, how much you have raised, what percentage you own, what percentage in Series A in common, so on and so forth. And what is the stock option for founders? And with that, and use of proceed, all right, and the future financial needs. And then, what additional fund do you need? Later on, I will talk about this specific item under the money. What major milestones will the financing get you to? All right, so I see a lot of CEOs or founders always trying to get this one close. They will try to please the VCs or the investors by saying any words. Let me tell you three words by my 20-some years experience as a venture capitalist. Be honest to yourself, be honest to yourself, be honest to your team, and be honest to the investors. You will win the end game, all right? So the end game I'm talking about here is basically the exit strategy. You want to go IPO, you want to be acquired. If you want to be acquired, by whom, why? So those are kind of things you got to think from starting point. With that, I'd like to go to the next slides and focus on what major milestones will be financing get you to. Now, I see so many companies, like I said earlier, and trying to get money quick and close this round of financing. And they can promise anything they want to do. But they forget to tell the investors that at least this is my criteria. For the Series A or for seed round, we're dealing, as Steve pointed out earlier, the founding team risk. Do you really have a team? Can you really build a product? Right? The technical risk. This is sort of belongs to the seed and Series A. And the product and product launch risk, I call this probably Series A and Series B risk. And then followed by the customer acquisition and viral growth risk. I call Series B and Series C or CD sort of risk. And someone called this called the onion theory of risks, right? How do you peel those risks into milestones with the money or the cash you raised to deal with those risks and to reach that milestone, to fulfill your promise? That's the key I'm looking for. To be coherent, to be consistent, to be honest with all the numbers based on the management team you have, based on the business model you have, based on the market, bottom-up analysis you have done, and based on the money you have on hand. How do you execute that? Can you do it, right? Those are kind of things. I have another job as a professor. I was telling Steve and Helen during dinner time that I always ask my student, come to my office for any question you have. I know everything you know except your social security number, right? I'm not joking. All the VCs, experienced venture capitalists, they will sit down with you, like Steve just did, right, without any slides. They will sit down with you, look at your eyes. Give me 5 minutes, talk about your company. And from 5 minutes, your presentation, I know what you can, at least I will give you a second chance or not, right? So that's the issue. And I would also answer that lady's question, right? How do you select your investors? My philosophy as a venture capitalist, before I put money at your company, I'm the boss. Because I have to do all the due diligence. But once I put money, you're my boss. See, because my future, my achievement is based on your performance, right? So we're the team. So that's the philosophy, being a good, venture capitalist. We're not here to deploy the money, we are your team. So that's the philosophy you have to learn. We are here to support you. We need you to help us to make money, to justify our existence as the venture capitalist. So 3 questions as a venture capitalist today, even I have to say, we do annual review. We have to justify our existence to our LP. How much money, Stephen, you have invested for Sycamore Venture, right? What's your return in terms of IRR or cash-to-cash return? Why do we still need you? Those are 3 very tough questions, but that's the business we are in. We are not in charity organization, so that's the reality we are carrying. So, with that being said, I'd like to show 2 case studies. I've been very lucky with my domain knowledge. I have invested 6 companies in the analog and communication integrated circuit. Today's you call the MEMS, whatever you call Internet of Things, sensors, whatever. This is much more sophisticated than the sensor building. All 6 which I did, not a single failure, right? So that's 100% successful rate. The least return is AATI, which is 4.5x. The highest return is Radic, 16x. So it's a pretty good track record. I don't have any magic. The only magic I have, I interviewed the good designers. I spend a lot of time before I commit my money, the fund money into that. But once you do that, it's just a piece of a cake. He or she can do the job for you. So the takeaway is that focus innovation with the right and seasoned technical team to create a timely and differential value proposition to the customers. Whether it's cost leadership, whether it's the product reliability, or the product integration, or the product feature, so on and so forth, timely product. So with that, I think it's a proven successful track record, but it's the niche you got to focus on. All right, that's case 1. Case 2, that's a famous business model. I still remember back to early 2003, we still have the fund I'm managing, still have $150 million because that's during the dot-com burst, right? Everybody shying away from high tech, but our money was raised, our 200 million is raised for high tech investment. So nothing I can do. I was sitting, in my Shanghai office. Well, I don't know what to do. So we have to switch to the traditional business instead of high tech. So I sit down with my partner. I said, Eric, what should we do? And I suddenly popped in my mind, there's a Hotel 6 in the United States, right? Hotel 6. And I saw a lot of China, a lot of people come from China. At that time, living in a 3-star hotel. Very filthy, right? Very dirty, right? So I said, why don't we create like 200 or 150 RMB per day, kind of a, so-called leading economic clean budget hotel chain in China. So I started the first one in Shanghai, in a very sort of like very modest, neighborhood, okay, Wangpu, okay. So then I created this buzzword called proven and scalable. I said, can you afford 150 RMB per day? I provide a 10 RMB breakfast for free with the mantou and xifan, right? The rice and I also demand the housekeeper and the door keep person, the tall handsome guy from Dongbei, okay? Cut your fingernail, don't smoke, cut your hair, short, right? And say thank you, say 谢谢你, thank you for coming, right? And don't take tips. And that business model works. works very well. So we scaled in Beijing, Hangzhou, and suddenly, within 3 years, for our $3 million investment, we made $170 million net profit for our LPs. That's pretty good, right? 62 times return. So it's very simple, but it's a business model. So the takeaway is adopt the right business model, proven and scalable, and to timely assemble the right management team to execute. We hired the management from Singapore. We fired the CEO from Shanghai. We had to do that. So everybody's multi-millionaire now. But anyway, that's case study too. So I'm not sort of bragging the achievement, but the bottom line is that you gotta really work on the 4M. And once you focus, you're honest and timely and execute, you can do it. But I don't care what business model, what economy model you're doing. So some say, Stephen, maybe you're a little bit outdated with the so-called social networking, right? I do think a lot about that. So I give strong advice to the modern economy. So a lot of founders about the so-called social networking using Google or Facebook to get so-called customer adoption. So I give you this strong advice with the 4 suggestions. I call new level of user intimacy, right? That's where the people will pay you and get business grow. Start with the business or life needs and not technology needs. As Steve pointed out earlier, one technology person cannot cut it. You gotta have someone can think about the business model and the market you're going to address into, right? Start with the business or life needs in mind, not just technology alone. In my time, when I invest those 6 companies, technology alone can still cut it. Even today, I'm looking for those with the patent protected sensor MEMS related technology with some sort of bundle integration with microcontroller with embedded software into that. I still invest in those companies. But I strongly advise you as a startup with business or life needs in mind as a priority. Number 2, user participation in the collaboration, as Steve pointed out earlier, as Heidi and also he pointed out, right? Get user participation. Don't just talk about eyeball, right? Really get real feeling. Are they you sort of call repeating and really are they crazy about your product? Even 1,000, right? Fast evolution of service based on user feedback. If they do go full speed, that's the time you should talk to your investor, right? That's the time you should talk to your investor. Not based on I got 10,000, so what, right? Get 1,000 dedicated, devoted customers, that's the time. Focus on best total experience. So those are sort of my personal feeling on today's economy. And that sort of ends from VC's perspective, how to raise money. And for the next 3 slides, I'd like to give you my crystal ball, right? First start with global. In short-term view, we know the end of QE may affect the global growth, and Middle East and Eastern Europe geopolitical risk may still there. And European deflation, German, being the leader, is suffering. But with all of that, I think it's going to be short-term. It's going to be short-term. The reason why, I think U.S. still is a leading economy in the global business, in the global economy. I think a strong U.S. dollars, historically a healthy dollar. Oh, by the way, I want to make a disclaimer. Number 1, I'm not an economist. Okay. Number 2, I'm not a stockbroker. So those are sort of my personal crystal ball. All right. So he wanted me to throw this topic as a fun, and then we can kick off for better discussion. Okay. So historically, a healthy dollar, U.S. dollars, has to run in the rising stock and the growing economy. Number 2, low interest rate. We know low interest will help grow, right? But how long that can sustain? My personal feeling, before the end of the year, I don't think the Federal Reserve will increase interest rate that much, maybe just by 0.5. Low inflation will also facilitate growth. The cheap oil, a lot of debate, right? The cheap oil may affect the oil producing companies, but the other consumers, transportation, consumers, manufacturing, all going to benefit. As a net result, we're going to increase at least $1 trillion stimulus for this year. So the net effect is a plus. So the last one is my crystal ball for U.S. economy. I believe this year will remain on modest growth track this year, and interest will climb slowly, very slowly. And Federal Reserve will continue to maintain an extraordinary easy money policy. In the last, I think with the current PE ratio less than 16, I think we still have a lot of hope. So personal investment management, I buy at a dip, we call dollar cost averaging. It's a good time to do it. I still think that totally invested, fully invest is still the strategy. You don't miss, the height of the debt. So with the operating, estimate, even though you see some, company may not fall short on that, but the bottom line, we anticipate the additional stock gain in this year, along probably be some period of weakness. That's the time probably dollar cost averaging is the right approach. With that, I think I'd like to kick off any questions. Maybe before that, I can take 2 questions on my subject, how to get funded by VCs. Just 2 questions, simple questions. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, you said that you have a kind of a perfect record. The 6 things that you invested, they were successful. The 6 of them were in the same field, correct? It's because you know what you know better, and that's what you stick.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's my domain. Yes. Focus on your domain, your expertise. That's the key. They hired me. Sycamore hired me in 1999 because I was trained as an optical communication expert. But I think the market too hot. I'm a contrarian investor. Everybody says no, I go into that and think why. And everybody's very hot, I shy away. On my personal investment as well.
For your information, Stephen, before his VC days, he was a founder for 4 companies, 3 of which went.
Yeah, I founded 4 companies, all went public or being bought out. So it's a quite a good experience. But again, I've been honest to my investors and very consistent what I do. If I don't know, I don't do it. Focus on your core companies. Yes, sir.
Yes. All right. So for your investment, and I was told you have like primary investor, and you also have kind of follow-up. So you always do like primary, the first one that get investors come in, or you just kind of follow somebody else?
Sycamore Venture is so-called a cross stage. We do from seed. Actually, probably less than 5% we do seed. Most of it from A to D. We do follow investments. And Sycamore has a policy because we are funded heavily by Citibank. If I sponsor a deal, means I source the deal, I do due diligence, I write investment memo, I do follow-up, investment, and I do post-management investment. I also help the company go IPO and be bought out. So go to A to Z. I was also required to put 10% of my own money with the team to support this one. Means we go with the company. Even today, the company fail, we fail. So that's called venture business. That's very good discipline. That's how we get paid. One more last question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so can you talk about the share ratios for founders? So which is the general ratio for founders?
The issue of what?
The ratio between the ratio of shares.
Ratio of success?
Shares.
Yeah, which percentage of ownership you take? What percentage of ownership you take?
Yeah.
How distributed growth?
Well, typically that for the Series A is for the seed stage we typically give out like 15 to 10%. For Series A we give out the company probably around 30 to 40% at most, around 30%. For Series B the company probably give out roughly about 60%, depending on the size of each round. So by the pre-IPO stage, I think we're talking about Series D. Typically, it's about Series D. The owner still controls about 20%. So that's sort of ratio we're talking about. But those venture capitalists, they have all kinds of instruments. They have those preferred, they have liquidation preference, and they have those so-called anti-dilution. So it's a very evolved so-called, that's under my money item. So once you get used to that, once you get the company to that stage, they will coach you what to do.